Welcome to our interview with the speaker series for the United Astrology Conference 2026. I'm Melissa, and today we are joined by astrologer Cameron Allen. Cameron, can you please introduce yourself?
Hey, it's good to see you again, Melissa.
Yeah.
Hey, everybody, my name is Cameron Allen. Introduce myself. That includes like all the things, or like two,
Anything
or
you want to
yeah,
say? Yeah.
totally. Okay, cool. Yeah, well, first off, I want to say thank you, everybody, for being here with us right now in this present moment. And yeah, just hoping that you're getting really, really excited for the UAC conference. Like I said, my name is Cameron Allen. I'm a practicing herbalist, a practicing astrologer, and I have a tendency to, in my practice, most people know me as like a medical astrologer. I think of myself as a lot of different things, especially because in Memphis, Tennessee, where I live, I do a lot of different stuff, right? I help people with movement. I do stuff with herbs. I've been in the yoga community and stuff like that as well. And so my astrology tends to infuse all those things, plus my background in psychology, because I have a degree in psychology. I worked in like a level 4 lockdown facility working with youth. And so all these things are instrumental in my practice where I do utilize the way I like to break it down to make it really like concise, let's say, is that I use evolutionary astrology to work with psychology, my more psychology background, with the herbalism and my degree in health and sports science. I work more with the medical astrology. And then with traditional astrology, I work on more, let's say, concrete, maybe we could say predictive or planning or assessing what needs to happen in people's lives. And honestly, in some sessions, I'm like using all those things all at once, along with yogic practices, breathing practices, things like that, movement, herbs, just different ways as well to like think about how we can return back to ancient ways in the present moment, modern times. So, like being mindful of the cycles of nature and being in relationship with life directly rather than shoulds, supposed tos, and kind of how our society has ignorantly modulated things and we've kind of just ignorantly taken them on.
Hmm.
So, I mean, it's a bit about me and my work. Yeah.
Nice, nice. I like the balance between, the body, you've got this movement, herbs, it's very like earthly sense, and then psychology and evolutionary astrology. Can you talk, I guess, about what came first, like chicken and egg this a little bit?
Totally. Yeah, for sure. So, I would say that the medical astrology came first, in a sense, right? Because even when I think back to it, I was having a conversation with somebody the other day, and I started first learning about the planets through Carl Jung, and I actually wrote a paper on the planets via psychology. But I wasn't thinking about astrology. I was just like, oh, this guy's talking about astrology and psychology. This is really interesting. And so I guess in a subtle way, I started there first, but when it came to how I got to astrology, it was specifically through working with herbs and then understanding the planet correlations with my teacher, Sage Apoplam, at the School of Evolutionary Herbalism. So I started with medical astrology first, and then I started learning evolutionary astrology, which became like my main priority as far as like my mode of perception, especially working in a location in Memphis, Tennessee, where there were just like a lot of people who needed like psychological support, let's say. I mean, they need the herbal support, but I live in the Bible Belt, and so a lot of
Yeah.
people just don't care about astrology in that way. Whereas there's like this health wave going on, but they didn't care about astrology. But there were particular people who just needed emotional psychological support, and I just used the tool of evolutionary astrology to support people. So it was medical astrology, then evolutionary astrology, and then much later on came traditional astrology and infused it into that. So great question.
Thank you. Yeah. And great answer. I really like the way that, I've talked to a lot of astrologers now doing this series and seeing the ways that we bring in these other elements that kind of preceded and heavily inform the way we practice. So, how did you transition from, oh, this guy Carl Jung is talking about astrology to practicing? Like, how did that look?
Okay, yeah, this is where I have to like take a breath and make sure. Okay, so so from being a psychology student, I was a student athlete in college, and my last year I got really really serious about it, and to with the point like I became like this psychology student of the year at my school, and so then I was like, okay, like I'm gonna really take this psychology thing further. And then I started working with youth at a lockdown facility for troubled youth, and I was working there, and I had this very particular way that I thought I knew the world in reality. And I had, let's say, a supernatural experience where like I actually like I came to an experience where I like realized, oh, like demons are real. Like at this facility, I had a direct experience with like a demon essentially. And so then I went to a spiritual supply store locally in my city, and I started going there pretty often, and they like were like, hey, like you are coming in here and you're like helping people, like do you want a job here? And around that time too, I also met my first teacher. Her name is Norma de Jesus. She's from Puerto Rico, and she's a medicine woman. And from there I started working at the spiritual supply store, started practicing working with the herbs, and then I started having dreams, and the dreams sent me to Portland, Oregon to go see Sage Papam, Judith Hill, and Matthew Wood teach at a conference. And then from there, I just pretty much went down the road of astrology. I'm not even gonna say I
Nice.
left behind herbalism, but astrology more and more took over my practice and became my main mode of perception to like reality itself, essentially. And
Nice.
so, yeah, that's how it kind of transition took place.
And that feels like a necessary transition if you're like engaging in a space where there's like combatants, for lack of a better word.
Totally.
Yeah. Okay, so then how have you incorporated, and like at what points in this, like your journey with astrology, did movement become so important to you?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, so I mean, being a college football player, fitness, exercise was always kind of important. And then when I was working with the youth at the center, that became a really big thing for me too, as well. Just like teaching them little basic breathing exercises, and they always would teach this thing they call chicken fingers, and you just kind of do this, and you like count with your fingers. For people that can't see what I'm doing, I'm pressing my thumb to my pointing finger, then my middle finger, then my ring finger, then my pinky finger, and you just do that over and over again. And you like say particular things. And then I went to Kundalini yoga, and it was like we literally were doing that in class, right? And it was just like this, like I was like, oh my gosh, like what's going on here? So the breathing and movement came really from, because I didn't say it, but I had a minor in sports and exercise psychology as well,
Okay.
right? And so like a lot of the kids would be like having depressive tendencies, or whenever they would be acting out, I would invite them into an outlet that was like expressive of their emotions, but through movement, oftentimes in a way that was safer than, yeah, just going off on people and trying to fight other people. I would just like be like, hey, it's okay that you're angry, but let's go over here and like channel that in like a healthier way. And bringing it into astrology, that's been, yeah, I think that's been a little bit more tricky because of my relationship with movement. I was still very much so pretty much a gym bro for a really long time. So over like the last 4 years, I would say, I got my certification in Kundalini yoga, but that still wasn't, I wouldn't call that movement. That's a very particular type of system. But after that, I went to school for Ayurveda. And so I'm almost
Mm,
done with that now. But it was teaching like how to think about yoga, right? Like, and so I started learning how to think more about movement from these perspectives. And then I took a bunch of different classes. So things that had to do more with connecting the nervous system to exercising. So I guess I started becoming an educated gym bro. And then I moved more towards just understanding movement from different facets. So right now, like recently, I just took a class that was elemental movement, which is something I've been really strongly on myself already, but this was specifically from like a dance organization. There's a dance
nice.
organization who does aspects of psychosomatic therapeutic things as well. So I do like I work with that. So movement from the perspective of the elements, that is like dance theory involved. I'm right now in a program that mixes jujitsu, calisthenics, striking. So for people who don't know, striking, just like punching and kicking, yoga, and animal patterns, so animal mobility patterns. And so I've just been learning just like a wide range of like what is movement on a base level. I just got like a 12-week calisthenic program that I'm working with a teacher on. So I'm just learning the basics of movement from a variety of schools of thought. and understanding how that can come together into my own type of practice, which really is based off of listening. It's just based off of listening and being reflective. I have 6 planets in Capricorn. And so everything needs to be practical and everything needs to be a process. Everything has to be about responsibility, like people's ability to respond in the moment and them actually being able to be with that, right? And so I've gathered all this data and information with my Gemini moon brain and just have implemented in these very particular ways. I guess it would be helpful as well to tell people I tore my ACL in college. And when I tore my ACL, I spent a summer in Florida and did like over 250 hours of physical therapy interning too as well. So I also have that background too. So that's incorporated in the movement stuff that I've done. And I'm just a nerd. And so I just continue to gather data and information and just implement it into my astrology practice based off of the first house, the sixth house, the eighth house, the 12th house. That's how I kind of use it. Just like assessing those parts of the body and seeing how much tension someone's holding in those parts of the body, because there's specific psychological things that also go along with what sign is in the sixth, eighth, and 12th. And so we go through those layers of the body, and once I do that, I can kind of see what needs to be adjusted or modulated, having to do with not only their physical body through that assessment, but also what would be helpful for their psychology. Like, so we could say affirmations or reflections or contemplations to have during doing the movement practices. So it's kind of psychosomatic exercises, let's call them. I don't want to call it therapy because that's not correct, but it's therapeutic.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I love that distinction because it can be therapeutic without being therapy.
Totally. Yeah.
Um, so do you have well, we met at Norwalk, so I know you have experience with conferences, but have you been to
Yeah.
UAC before?
No, I have not been to UAC actually, but I hear like the greatest things about it. And even just like, it's interesting. Like people will like ask me like, "Oh, have you spoken at this place? Have you spoken at that place?" But when people talk about UAC, it's like their like eyes get like a little bigger and brighter, and they're like, "Are you going to UAC?" And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, like what's going on here? Like I'm about to enter like the astrological cult or something." Like it's like this is so. It's like I'm like really excited about it, and I'm like, so no, I have not been to UAC, but I'm really excited to go because yeah, I could just see everybody's like really enamored with the experience. And I mean, gosh, it's just such a unique thing. And, in a world of people who we tend to feel like we probably nerd out and we're like kind of off to ourselves on our own, for the whole planet of astrologers to come together is just like really special.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm glad you've heard the good word about UAC. Do you
So,
have any expectations or hopes for this one coming up next year?
mm, yeah, I think that my hope is that I can not, it's not that I can, I'm looking forward to doing something more technical.
Mm,
Yeah, I'm looking forward to teaching something more technical because it's such a big stage to be on. And at other conferences that I've been to, I've really emphasized just being in the body or doing something as like very, very relational. Not that what I'm going to do is a technique is not going to be relational, but I do think that I've put forth a specific facet or face to the astrological community, and I want to put this like more precise version of me forward as well, to be able to show a little bit more of the range that I have and the particularity that I can have, even though I tend to be much more open and like getting people like maybe think like this, think like that. And it's like, okay, well, here's actually a technique. Let's get the technique down. And then from there, how do we actually carry this technique?
hmm
And I'm really looking forward to showing people the combo of the two, especially people that have already been exposed to my work in other ways.
Nice, nice. That'll be exciting. Yeah. And I think if there's anywhere to do it, it's going to be UAC. So,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Where can viewers and listeners find out more than about you?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram at CA Dream 6, or you can find me at Holistic Health Astrology on Instagram as well. And then my website is www.cadreamplanet.com. CADreamplanet.com. And if you go on YouTube and you just type in Cameron Allen Astrology, I'll pop up in a bunch of different places. And sooner or later, I'm going to be starting on my YouTube page, which you'll be able to find that at Cameron Allen Astrology as well.
Nice, nice. Perfect. I will get that all linked in the description box down below. And if anybody wants to learn more about Cameron or any of our other speakers, you can head over to uacastrology.com. But otherwise, again, thank you for joining us and thank you everybody for listening. Have a great day.
Stay blessed.
Thank you for joining us today. You can find new episodes on our channel every Monday and Wednesday, continuing through to the United Astrology Conference in 2026. We also invite you to attend UAC 2026, taking place in Chicago, Illinois from September 3rd to the 9th. As the largest astrological conference in the world, UAC offers an unparalleled opportunity to deepen your astrological studies and connect with a global community. With over 270 lectures, more than 180 esteemed speakers, and 1,500 attendees, this gathering is a cornerstone event for both seasoned professionals and dedicated students of astrology. For details on registration, scholarships, volunteer opportunities, or advertising, please visit uacastrology.com or refer to the links in the description box below.